Title: The Abyss's Echo in the Wood. Forgetfulness Alley was a festering wound in the heart of the city. Sunlight never dared to touch its walls, and the rain, instead of cleansing, seemed to drag along fragments of past nightmares. It was the territory of rats, of dancing shadows, and of whispers lost in the night. And, of course, it was the home of Marcos, a vagrant consumed by despair and bad luck. Marcos survived by rummaging through garbage, selling empty cans, and begging for coins. His existence was a continuous gray, an endless cycle of hunger and cold. One night, searching for something of value among the containers, he stumbled upon it, an old wooden box, crudely carved, covered in dust and cobwebs. The box didn't seem to belong in that place. Its wood, of a dark and deep tone, emitted a strange vibration that resonated in Marcos's bones. He picked it up cautiously, feeling an icy current run down his arm. It was heavy, incredibly heavy for its size. He carried the box to his makeshift shelter, a gap between two buildings, protected by a piece of grimy tarpaulin. Under the faint moonlight, he examined the object in more detail. It had no visible locks or hinges. It was as if the box had been carved from a single piece, a solid block of wood imbued with an unsettling energy. Then he heard it. A voice, raspy and tired, that seemed to emanate from the wood itself. "Open it. You have to see." Marcos shuddered. He thought it was a product of his imagination, of hunger and accumulated fatigue. But the voice persisted, an insistent whisper that seeped into his mind. "Open it. You have nothing to lose." Curiosity, or perhaps despair, overcame fear. He looked for a sharp stone and began to scrape the surface of the box, searching for a crack, a slit that would allow him to open it. The wood resisted, hard as bone. As he struggled with the box, Marcos began to notice something strange on the walls of the alley. Shadows that moved with unnatural speed, that stretched and twisted as if they had a life of their own. He ignored the phenomenon, focused on his task. Finally, after several minutes of effort, he managed to open a small slit in the lid of the box. A nauseating stench escaped through the opening, a smell of rotting flesh and damp earth. Marcos held his breath, feeling a chill run down his spine. He peered into the slit. What he saw paralyzed him with terror. It wasn't a clear image, but a distorted, fragmented vision, as if he were looking through a broken mirror. He saw writhing tentacles, unblinking eyes staring at him, a mouth full of teeth as sharp as blades. He saw an abyss of darkness and horror that drew him in with an irresistible force. He recoiled, terrified, dropping the box to the ground. The slit slammed shut, and the raspy voice faded away. But the shadows in the alley intensified, dancing with a frenzied fury. Then he saw it. An amorphous creature, made of shadows and nightmares, that crawled along the walls of the alley. It had long, slender limbs, ending in sharp claws. Its head was a blur of darkness, speckled with bright spots that looked like hungry eyes. The creature advanced towards the box, drawn by the ethereal voices that emanated from within. Voices that whispered promises of power, of knowledge, of satisfaction. Voices that called it to return to its home. Marcos watched, petrified, as the creature tore through the wood with its claws, ripping the box as if it were paper. Once it had opened a hole large enough, it entered, disappearing into the darkness. The stench of rotting flesh intensified, flooding the alley. The shadows calmed, returning to their normal state. The silence returned, a heavy and oppressive silence that weighed on Marcos like a tombstone. But he wasn't alone. Now he could hear the voices. Not the raspy voice from before, but a multitude of ethereal voices, whispering in his mind, promising things he couldn't understand. They urged him to approach, to touch the box, to join them. Marcos felt an irresistible force pushing him towards the box. He knew it was dangerous, that he was on the verge of madness, but he couldn't resist. Curiosity, or perhaps despair, took hold of him again. He approached the box, extending his trembling hand. His fingers brushed the splintered wood. Then he saw something inside the box. It wasn't the creature, or the tentacles, or the unblinking eyes. It was something much more terrifying. He saw himself. A distorted and grotesque version of himself, trapped in a loop of suffering and despair. He saw his own soul, empty and corrupted, consumed by darkness. He recoiled with a choked cry, stumbling and falling to the ground. The vision faded, but the terror remained etched in his mind. He understood the truth then. The box was not a door to another world, but a mirror that reflected the deepest fears of the human being. The creature was not an external entity, but a manifestation of Marcos's own despair. The ethereal voices were not promises, but an invitation to self-destruction. Marcos stood up, staggering, and walked away from the box. He ran as fast as he could, Away from Forgetfulness Alley, away from his own nightmares. He never looked back. But he knew the box would be waiting. In another dark alley, on another night of despair. Waiting for another vagrant, with the same tempting promise and the same terrifying truth. Because the abyss's echo always finds its way into the wood.